Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities in Miniatures, and if you're here today to listen to me wax nostalgic over comics from my childhood, then you are in for a treat with today's Obscurities in literature. And I bring to you the mighty Thor, the War of the Pantheons. And actually, so fun story here. When I was a child, once upon a time, obviously, I was going through my cousin's enormous comic collection, as I've mentioned a couple of times. And one of the things that I really distinctly remember enjoying were the Celestials, Marvel's Celestials, which first showed up in the Eternals. And I remembered this one Thor comic. And I had no idea what number it was. I had no idea any info about it. And I mean, this is decades ago, by the way, obviously. This is like early 80s material here. But I remembered Arsham, which is the red celestial that's always giving the thumbs up or down, showing up. And then he had like an even bigger buddy coming at one point. And it took me a lot of internet sleuthing, and I finally figured it out, what issues they were. And then after doing even more digging around on the internet, I realized that it's actually in this epic collection. And what a collection it actually is, because not only does it have that story in it, but it has another book that I can distinctly remember going over with my cousin and him giving me a hard time about, because I thought it was originally drawn by Jack Kirby, and no, it actually wasn't. Joke's on me. For a long time, I actually thought that Ron Frenz, the artist that does the bulk of the issues in this mammoth of how many, like over 400 something pages, a couple other artists here and there, but he channels so much Jack Kirby in his work in this book. I literally thought that was Kirby's pen name. Like, my cousin gave me this long-winded, oh yeah, well, he was, having his outs and he'd gone to DC, which I was aware of, in the Super Friends. This is my cousin who's like, legit hardcore collector in the mid to late, well, all of the 80s for that matter. But yeah, he was giving me a hard time saying, oh yeah, look at it. It totally looks like he drew it. That's his pen name. And I legit thought it was. So, you can see it in some of the posing here. We actually start the whole book off with a Secret Wars tie-in from Thor 383. My cousin is going crazy. I remember when those were coming out. And these are actually the kind of Thor comics I grew to like, much more so than when he's taken on street-level thugs. I honestly... if you've got Thor in the modern day, I'm really not into it. When he's running around, in full-on fantasy mode with Asgard and space stories and stuff, those are the ones that I was all about. And so that's why these particular issues, his whole thing with the celestial battles, was one that I really enjoyed. And you can see even in some of the posing here, like the way his body's flying away as he takes on the wrecking crew, there's very Simonson-esque, just over-exaggeration, and that's not that surprising because the Walt Simonson run was actually right before these books, so, not super surprising to see that there. But a lot of the posing, we end up getting into, right off the bat, we have a lot of really random stories, at least seemed that way at first. We have the Thor of the future. I can't remember his name. He had a weird one, but he actually shows up later on in the series. I was like, I remember that, but I didn't know why I remembered it. We have a flashback to Thor wanting to fight with the Hulk, and they proceed to ruin a local town, smashing everything they possibly can on top of each other, catching each other on fire, fun stuff. Thor griping about the fact that, he was ready to hang up his battle armor that Simonson designed. And then we start to see the Egyptian stuff showing up. And you can see very Kirby Buscema style monsters here with the shading there. Even the poses again. Not at all that surprising. We have Celtic gods show up for a bit. What was his name? Tyr? I don't even remember what his name was. Lear. I don't know. And then we get to the books that I was looking for. Like I said, and when I saw that cover, I was like, that's it! That's the one I remember! So yeah, I had to find these issues. When I finally figured that out, I had to track these down. And the story basically starts, you've got the whole overarching thing here with this whole War of the Pantheons is actually you've got Seth, who is the Egyptian god of death, who's menaced Thor throughout this decades, centuries even, at least in terms of comic book continuity. But, you know, going back to the Kirby era of stuff in the mid to late 60s, he was already showing up. But in this book in particular, we have Seth, and throughout this story, throughout these issues, he keeps popping up, and then at the end, we have this big blowout for issue 400, where we get full-on Kirby-style artwork. But we have Thor end up on a planet full of space pirates and aliens, which I am all for. I love when we have weird sci-fi in comic books. And lo and behold, it's time for the planet to be judged. I have always liked the Celestials. I always have. Always probably will. So, I mean, maybe I've been tempted to do a video just talking about Celestials. You know, going back to the Eternals, the Jason Aaron stuff in the Avengers, Hickman stuff. I mean, there's just, I love those stories. I love, you know, I'm like going off on a tangent here. I like doing that too. But I really do enjoy when we get into the kind of creation myths that permeate comic books. To me, that stuff, I like seeing what they come up with and how they go about it and how they tie it back into these characters. So that's something I've always enjoyed. And honestly, like the Eternals books, maybe I should do a review on the Omnibus. I mean, I actually just got rid of my old one with the original series and got the upgraded new one. It's got like the 80s miniseries in it. It's even bigger. Sadly, it doesn't have the Gaiman miniseries in there either, but that's a different story. But here's what I remember. So after we have Ersham show up, he gets his buddies. Exitar the Executor. Love these double page splashes. My mouth is getting ahead of my thinking. Or the other way around, I don't remember. But I always loved all like that cosmic look of him. And so like we have the space pirates on this planet trying to escape, but the Celestials have surrounded the planet with like this force shield as they're going to wipe out all life on it because they've been deemed unworthy, and that's the whole thing the Celestials do. And so Thor has decided that since he is going to protect this planet, he is going to try and take out a Celestial, which, you know, I mean, it's doable in Marvel Comics, but it doesn't happen very often. And Exitar is like even bigger than a typical Celestial. And so finally Thor pierces the armor and starts going inside it and experiencing all these various sensations of existing in different places all at the same time as he's trying to smash his way into the cerebral cortex, or what equates to that for this giant, you know, progenitor of the gods type thing. And there's like giant monsters that are like, you know, blood cells trying to stop Thor from being in there. And you get these crazy Kirby-esque views as all the bodies are flying around, piling up. And again, I feel like Ron Frenz is really channeling some Kirby poses here. One of the things, and I haven't pointed it out, is like every time there's a bad guy, they're always standing there with their legs splayed out, their arms behind their backs, looking downwards and just grimacing. And to me, that is such a Kirby pose. And eventually they save the planet. I'll let you figure out what happens there. So here we have Seth. Finally, Seth showing up with his evil Cobra warriors that look like something out of G.I. Joe, which was totally cool. I mean, this is like my era of Avengers growing up, when you had Cap being U.S. agent. Seth's army showing up with their high-tech battle tanks, zapping lasers everywhere.
My illustrious lord has instructed me to bestow upon you the ultimate gift of peace and tranquility, the gift of death.
Sometimes reading Thor comics is a chore, just because of all the over-the-top verbiage. So, we fight around for a while, and then eventually Thor ends up back on Midgard, and things happen with boring stuff. Like, Daredevil shows up at one point. They have like a lady writing a movie about Thor's life or something. They're setting a lot of stuff up with Eric, what is his name? Eric Masterson, the architect guy who ends up becoming, the second identity, dual identity of Thor. And then Seth here in all of his Kirby-esque views decides to screw with Thor some more and takes a bunch of people from the hospital where one of his buddies is staying and turns them into Egyptian superhero baddies where they have to then stop Thor from saving his buddy. This is the pose I'm talking about. Look at Balder here. Legs out, arms behind his back, grimacing downwardly. That is a Kirby pose if I've ever seen one. Look at Balder's armor even. Those poses are pure Jack Kirby. Look at this.
I'm gonna stick all my limbs out.
Kirby crackle everywhere. And then we finally get into the Seth proper invasion around like issue 398 or so. And he's got his tanks coming to Asgard. Thor smashing stuff up. Getting imprisoned. Fighting the good fight. And then we finally, are we at issue 400? Almost. Again, even look at the faces. The facial expressions look like Kirby stuff. You got the armies invading Asgard. Not like that ever happened before, right? Look at Sif. Sif looks like something out of a Kirby book right there. This is what I remember. This is what caused me to think that, well, maybe Jack Kirby did have a pen name. Like I said, this looks like about issue 400. Dramatic poses. Energy exploding everywhere. Sorter showing up. So yeah, if you dig the Kirby style, if you dig those sci-fi adventures, I think this is a really cool book to look for. We got a bunch of backup stories, and then the one I remember is this one right here. A Charles Vess illustrated one. So yeah, fun times. Ooh, Colleen Doran. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. This was the one I was looking for, but this is such a nicer version of it. So, if you're interested in any of the Thor stories, the Celestials, or anything of the 80s, I think this is a really cool epic collection to look for if you guys are into this kind of stuff. It definitely encapsulates a certain point in my childhood, lifetime, and those memories of reading about Exitar and Arisham have definitely cemented themselves in my personal history. And definitely is always something I've enjoyed. So, hope you guys did too. And with that said then, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.